So the format for tonight's program is a short presentation by Dr. Bragen and followed by a question and answer session. Index cards will be distributed soon. If you have any questions over the course of the program, write them down. And while we hope to get through as many questions as we can, given the short period of time, Dr. Bragen and other professionals have kindly agreed to stay back behind and answer any other individual questions. This program is being telecasted on the Edison Board of Ed TV, so I kindly request all members of the audience to stay quiet so viewers at home can watch the program uninterrupted as well. With that, I would like to invite tonight's featured speaker, Edison Superintendent Dr. Bernard Bragen, for his short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Simran, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our town hall meeting on our school referendum, which will be March 10th, 2020, from 12 to 8 p.m. And first, I want to welcome you to the Lincoln Elementary School, and I want to thank our gracious host, Mr. Sean Scully, the principal, for helping us out here and setting everything up and giving us his multi-purpose room, we'll call it, to use for this venue. We picked this school on purpose because this is one of the most crowded schools in the district. This building was probably made for 500 or 600 students, and we're now approaching 1,000. If you walk down the hallways, you just get a feel for it. It's hard to experience what we experience every day when there are no children here, but just even the food serving items and things out there. We don't have a cafeteria or a space to put them. So when we have lunch here, kids literally get their lunch and cycle through the hallway, and then they take it back to their classrooms because of the space limitations that we were dealing with. And that's just one example across the district. So what we want to do tonight is provide a forum to give information in a town hall format. As Simran said, I'm going to show a brief video that we put together, and then we're going to show another video that one of our students at John Adams Middle School put together that kind of highlights what some of the situation and some of the problems are that are directly related to the overcrowding. And then, as Simran said as well, we're going to pass around index cards. If you could put your specific questions you have. After that, we'll have a question and answer format. And once that's completed, if we run out of questions or we run out of time, as Simran said as well, we have our school representatives there, our architecture representatives, our financing representatives, and myself will be at the tables on the side to answer any questions individually. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate your attention. Right now, I'm going to show you a brief video. I think it's about 11 minutes.
Edison has been recognized as one of the 4th best places to live, not only in New Jersey, but in the entire United States. Our teachers work day in and day out to make sure that our students walk out of their classrooms ready to innovate, ready to solve real-world problems, and ready to make a difference.
Your schools are ranked in the top percentage in New Jersey educationally.
It explains why our hallways are bustling, why our classrooms are packed. The word's gotten out. Edison is a great place to live and to grow up.
Edison population's increasing and our students are increasing as well. Our teachers and our classrooms are not.
Edison Township School District has grown to 16,622 students in district for 2019. Based on the projected growth of our community within the next 3 years, 2,919 of our students will be without a seat, meaning they are not within the district's current capacity. With so many children to care for, 6 schools have been strategically selected for major upgrades to alleviate overcrowding district-wide.
The school was built for about 1,600 students. I think there's 2,700 plus now.
We're pushing 600 students over capacity based on the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Students are getting to class barely on time or late. The hallways weren't designed with the population size that we have now.
There's always what the state says is correct, but then there's what the educational research says is correct, and then it's what kids know is correct. And we're over by hundreds and hundreds in all of those areas.
Us teachers can't even walk around the room because there's so many desks crammed in. When I sat in this very classroom taking chem as a student at J.P. Stevens, it wasn't like this.
Overcrowding at this school is kind of ridiculous.
Going through the hallways is chaos.
So at the intersection, it's like everybody's just standing there. It's like all crowded.
We have kids who sometimes will fall or get knocked down because there are just so many students in the hallway at one time.
Passage here, trying to get through here, is an absolute disaster.
Our halls are not even, barely 8 feet wide, and it makes crossing Route 1 in the morning look like a picnic.
All of our specials are on carts, which means that the students sometimes during the winter never leave their classrooms. And I couldn't imagine being at that age not leaving the classroom at all.
I work off a cart, going from class to class, 6 classes a day. Sometimes classes are outside of the school, they're in trailers, we can't even take our carts there, so sometimes we're on foot with a bag.
The science classrooms have not been updated, probably not since the school actually was created in the 60s.
The shelving isn't even intact.
We were doing a lab by the teacher's desk. All of us were surrounding that one desk. Half of us couldn't even see. It was really hard to learn and focus because there were so many people.
We're not able to put air conditioning units into certain rooms because they'll trip the whole room. It's 1950s electricity, and it just doesn't go with today's electronics.
One thing right now that poses a huge safety hazard for us is our students having to go outside to the trailers.
The trailers were rescued from New Brunswick School District, got them for free.
Clearly, that was just a temporary situation, but now we're going on 5 years where we're using these trailers because we need the classroom space.
There is a distinct smell where we have to often put damp-rid buckets around the classroom to alleviate the smell or the moisture. There's parts of the wall from the moisture that are collapsing. There's the last row in certain classrooms the kids cannot sit because of the rotten floor.
We're in a situation where we have to maintain them because we're keeping the trailers suitable for the students. But suitable is not good enough.
We want to have them inside the building so I know all my students are safe in the building at the same time.
I'm really nervous once winter sets in, how they will be going back and forth. It's a health hazard to all the kids.
I have French in the trailers. Every seat is taken up. A lot of people in the back can't hear her or see the board.
Doesn't matter when it is, you can't park. People are parking in lots everywhere, side streets, parking in people's driveways. It's really bad.
My mom has to drop me off a mile away from the school to walk because there's so many parents dropping their kids off.
You take a look at schools our size, we've got a gym that's for a group 1 school. We're a group 4 or 5, our gym should be 2 or 3 times the size that it is. Our athletic facilities just aren't up to par.
We aren't able to get the proper stretching or have the proper amount of space to do physical exercise because there's so many people crowded in one area.
I understand the library was shut down because of lack of additional room, and that is just so sad.
We have to end up cutting their lunches short so that they can leave early to avoid the bottleneck because we can't have them being late to their next class because then that impacts instruction.
You spend 15 minutes in the lunch line and you barely get to eat. It's gonna get worse. Because even in my 4 years of high school, I'm seeing things change.
The kids come back home, they always bring back unfinished lunch boxes. That happens every single day.
Sometimes there's not enough places for them to sit, or they're on the edge of the bench.
I basically have 5 minutes to eat. That's a pretty short time to eat lunch.
There's so much interest in some of the clubs and there's so many kids, we can't accommodate all of them.
Students aren't allowed to take the classes that they want to because it's overcrowded.
I've been in the district long enough when we actually did have full day kindergarten at one point, then we went to half day kindergarten. I know the benefits academically, emotionally, developmentally for those students when they had a full day program. For our students who are in a half day kindergarten to come to full day first grade, it's a hard transition for them.
Last year we were in need of full day kindergarten.
Getting the kids to another aftercare or before care facilities was an issue for us.
My first son had half day, my second son had full day. The amount of learning that can happen from a teacher who has a child there for the 6 hours during the day is night and day.
Our assistant principal's office, one of them is in a closet that we've transformed into an office. We have a counselor who's also in a transformed closet/office.
We have 3 ladies from our food service committee that kind of all share one closet, and they have to serve the children in a hallway while everybody's passing. Their storage facility would not necessarily be used for a kitchen, but we use it now because it's all that we have.
The orchestra room is so tiny that the overflow has to come into our room constantly.
So our students then have to stand in the hallway and play their flutes or their clarinets.
We might even have to convert our custodial area into a classroom if this does not work, because we're in dire need for at least 4, 5, 6 Basically, we need almost 9 extra classrooms.
The referendum was proposed to address the New Jersey student standards for class size and environmental space for students. We'd effectively have to build a new J.P. Stevens to address the needs of all the students that are experiencing overcrowding at this point. But since that's spread out across the district, it's not a good solution.
I've had the chance to look at the architect's plans for the great things that we have in store for Edison. If the referendum passes, we really will get to move our schools into the 21st century. We are going to be able to take Edison to the next level and really show the world why we are one of the greatest places to live.
It's not just, well, my child's in this school right now and it's not going to impact them right now, but we know that high schools are going to be impacted greatly, and the students that are in elementary school now is going to impact them so much by the time they get to high school.
If approved, $31 million will be covered by debt service aid, funds from New Jersey for eligible school construction projects provided by the state.
Edison has one of the lowest costs in the state to educate a child. In fact, there's 95% of other districts that spend more on education than Edison does. Those same districts have a higher administrator to teacher ratio. So what does that tell you? We're putting the money into the classrooms where it belongs. It is needed, and these schools are overcrowded, and we need to take care of this.
The education here is at such a high standard, and I feel like the overcrowding is really bringing it down, and this is one way we have to kind of push to keep our standards up.
There's no way in the world they should not consider this, because it's only going to get worse.
If we're not going to invest in our schools and we're not going to invest in the safety, people aren't going to move here, and if people don't move here, our property values are not going to be maintained.
The unfortunate next step, if we don't have the referendum pass, is that we're going to have to look at something called a split schedule for the high school. What is that? That is where we have 2 sessions of instruction for students. We would start slightly earlier and have a session in the morning, which would end in early afternoon, and then we would start a second session for the second half of the school that would start in the afternoon and end in the early evening.
I remember when there was split session at the high school. J.P. Stevens wasn't even here yet. Edison High School had split sessions, and it was a real drag. Sports were affected, music was affected. How do you have a football team if half the kids are there in the morning, half the kids are there in the afternoon? It's a major problem. It would be a major problem for us for sure, because how do you run a band program? It's impossible to put that together unless they're all here at the same time.
If the referendum doesn't pass, we are not doing what's right by our students. It's been hard enough for our kindergarten teachers to try to cover a full year's curriculum into half day. If this happens at our high school, our students are going to fall behind. We want Edison to remain one of the best places to grow, to learn, and to be. And if we move to split day high schools, it's not going to be possible.
A lot of my friends whose kids were in elementary have sold their properties and have moved out, primarily because of the overcrowding issue. So over time, it will in effect affect our own property values, and that is not what we were imagining when we bought our homes here a few years ago.
Our educational rankings in the state would fall. It would just be a downward spiral. Edison has always been one of the leaders in innovation ever since the first incandescent light bulb that was placed here. And I believe we need to keep that tradition going.
Our greatest asset is our children, and our children are our future leaders. We have to give them the best opportunity to learn. And this bond referendum will help every child. It'll help our students here in Lincoln. It's going to help the middle school and also help the high school. So this is a huge deal for Lincoln Elementary, because finally we'll get kids where they need to be.
No matter who you are, if you're a senior citizen, of which I'm a member, if you've got students that are in 5th grade, it doesn't matter at this point in time. This is so needed. It's such a major problem that it would be a major mistake if this referendum did not go through.
The referendum vote will take place on December 10th between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. at your regular polling locations. Visit abrighteredison.com to learn more.
If you guys will allow me, I got one brief video that a student put together from John Adams Middle School that I'd like to share as well.
Hi, I'm Trogan Amarthanan, an 8th grader here at John Adams. Throughout the school, overcrowding is a growing issue. Classrooms are being filled to the limit, closets are being repurposed, and we have 2 old, cramped trailers as classrooms outside.
Estimates show that within 5 years, John Adams will be teaching 1,092 students.
This is 174 above its operational capacity of 918, and already issues are beginning to arise. Take a look at this French class. Every day, they have to walk all the way to the 6th grade wing and go outside to get to class, even in rain or snow, as do the choir students. What are some difficulties you face when you have to go to this trailer every day?
Some difficulties are when it's raining outside, we end up getting drenched when we are proceeding to go into the trailer. So it's kind of annoying, and yeah, it's really
It's sometimes when it's really hot, the room starts smelling bad, and then during the winters it's just really cold to keep going back and forth.
Fortunately, if the referendum is passed, the French students will have their own classroom and the musical students will have specialized rooms as well. In fact, the expansions won't only benefit our trailer classes. Other additions include 7 total general classrooms, 2 brand new science labs, a large addition to the gym, new offices and storage, an elevator for handicapped access, and so much more. On a broader scale, the referendum will make many more improvements to 5 other schools in the district, where in some, overcrowding is an even bigger issue. Bear in mind, taxes are estimated to, on average, increase by just $18. You can visit your regular polling location to cast your vote on March 10th between 12 and 8 p.m. Visit abrighteredison.com for all information. Make the effort to cast your vote, because your child's future is worth it.
Thank you. At this time, Simran, I'll ask you to come up and we'll progress to the next session of our town hall meeting.
Thank you again, Dr. Bragen, for being here. I appreciate your presentation on the bond, but before we get into that, I did want to address the several incidents that have recently occurred due to student health issues. Can you tell us what your administration has planned in respect to addressing those student health issues and preventive care measures that can be implemented?
Absolutely. We're all concerned about our students' overall health and well-being. And in light of recent events in the world, as you are all well aware, with the spread of what's known as the coronavirus, we've made we put significant attention into addressing those needs, as we normally would during the flu season. We take a direction from the CDC as well as our local boards of health, as far as we've been in contact with Jay Elliott from the Edison Department of Health, as well as the Middlesex County Department of Health, as far as establishing protocols for cleanliness, reminding our staff and students to clean their hands on a regular basis and sanitize them, as well as being more vigilant in the sanitization of our bathrooms and our overall school facilities and classroom desktops and those things, and just good hygiene practices to reduce the likelihood of a spread of the seasonal flu, or God forbid, any other flus that may come into our country as a result of things that are happening globally and across the world. We are being especially vigilant, even more so now, but we've always been that way during this time. And even the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control for our country, warns us a more serious risk is our normal seasonal flu, which kills thousands on an annual basis. So we are attentive to it, we will be responsive, and we'll take directions from our medical professionals at both the township, state, and country level.
Thank you. Bringing the conversation back to the bond, in December, voters voted on a proposal for $189 million, and they voted against it. This proposal is $183 million. Can you tell us what changed, what was not changed, and in your opinion, why this $183 million is necessary?
It's a great question, and we've heard that from other people as well. It's actually $183,193,000, and it's about a $6 million difference from the referendum that went out on December 10th. And people have said, why are you going out with something that's so similar for such a substantial amount? And that answer is really simple. We don't have a choice. And it's not like the kids are coming or they're moving in or we're not sure what it's going to be. The projections are there because we know where the students are. Our high school at J.P. Stevens has 2,600 students right now. Our high school at Edison High School has about 2,100 students. Even in the video that was produced in the fall, they talk about the number of students in the district at 16,600. We're over 16,800 just a few months later. And we're graduating classes that are smaller, 12th grade classes, than the incoming 8th grade classes. We know those students are here. They're coming. Those classes are 1,300 students or more, all the way down to 3rd grade. So the problem isn't going away. And we could say, yeah, well, the referendum was defeated in December. Oh, shucks, we can't do anything about it. That's not my job. I'm the chief school administrator. My job is to do everything in my power for the betterment of our children, the children of our community. And we looked at the referendum. We took a look at what we could cut. And we cut some things that we could view as superfluous because they weren't directly related to the overcrowding. There were some fields and some maintenance work on the outside with parking lots that still need to be done, but are not directly related to creating additional classroom spaces for our children. And that's where we came up with the number. We worked with our architecture firm, and we came up with that $183,192,000 because we think that's the absolute best we could do. And we're going back out so quickly because this is the time to do a referendum. The state only limits times when you could do it. The next available time is in September, and then November after that. That's too long. Every month we wait is longer it will take to implement the programs, which hopefully get approved in March. And we just can't wait that long. The students are coming, they're here, and I'm being paid as a chief school administrator to advocate for our children, to advocate for our district, and advocate for our town. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be doing the job that I'm paid to do.
Some people have said that this March referendum is too close in time to the one that happened in December. Do you believe it's appropriate to have this vote in March, and if so, why?
I do think it's appropriate, and I think I somewhat answered that question in the previous statement, because we have a time frame by the state when it determines when you could do the referenda, and March is the next available date. So that's why we decided to go with this date. I think I started officially as superintendent on December 9th, and the referendum was December 10th. Could have been a huge win for me right out of the gate. It wasn't, but nonetheless, this was the next available time. So we worked with all the people that were involved, from the architect to our finance people, our finance and facilities committee with the board. We took a hard look at what we had. We made some cuts that we could make it a little more palpable as far as the number goes, but that's as low as we can go. This is as soon as we can go back out to the public and ask for their support, because at the end of the day, it's our public, it's their children. It's not my children. My children don't go to school here. Everyone in the room and in our community do. And I'm being paid to advocate for their children, and I wouldn't want for the children in this room and in our community anything that I wouldn't want for my own children. So yeah, it's early. It's only a couple months later. And if this doesn't work, we're going in September, we're going in November, we're going in December, because we need to. It has to be dealt with. We can put our head in the sand and look the other way, and that's just going to get worse. The numbers are going to continue to get higher. And here's the other piece. The costs are going to get higher. The building costs are going to get higher. Everything's going to be more expensive a year, 2 years out. So why would I wait?
I know we have the finance people here to discuss specific questions, but many studies have shown that New Jersey has the highest property taxes in the country. Given that we already have high property taxes, can you tell us the impact on property taxes if the referendum is passed?
There's a couple of things in that question that if it's okay, I'd respond to. In New Jersey, and I don't know if this is the way it is across the entire country, because I was born and raised in New Jersey. I actually graduated from Edison High School in 1983. I know you guys are wondering, I really can't be that old, right? But in New Jersey, there's a system of government and education where each town funds its own system of education for schools. And you could argue whether that's right or wrong or whatever, but it creates local control. Our school boards determine our school policies and procedures for our town, what we want to dedicate our funds for, what our budgets are for Edison. It's not for Middlesex County, it's solely for Edison. And what that does is it differentiates the towns by their schools. People move to Edison. My parents moved from Jersey City in 1974 to Edison because the schools had a reputation of excellence. People move from all over the world today, not to Middlesex County, to Edison, because of the reputation our schools have. And in our funding structure, that means that our local community funds a large portion of that tax rate. And that's how it's always been in New Jersey. And you could argue whether that's right or wrong, but when you look at the statistics from a national perspective, New Jersey historically is either the first, second or third in the entire nation of 50 states. That's not an accident. When you dedicate the requisite funds for what's needed, things happen. You know, in any other community, in any other business or any other endeavor in our lives, if you don't fund it, it's not successful, whatever that may be. So in Edison, in New Jersey, local taxes fund the majority of our school system. And I think you get a great return on your investment. I really do. You look at where our students go on to college and to the careers that they get beyond Edison High School and J.P. Stevens High School, and the world is their oyster. And that's not an accident. That's a commitment of boards of education over time. Communities, taxpayers have consistently supported the education in this district, and it's made a difference. That's why you're here. That's why my parents came here, and I'm grateful that they did. It changed my life. I owe my success to Edison Township Public Schools. And what a great opportunity to come back and be able to work in this capacity. So the other answer to your question is, what's the impact? It's $215 approximately per month. This will add to the average assessed tax rate. Per year. Thank you for keeping me on point. Or $18 per month, or 60 cents per day. Now, I like coffee. I can't even get a coffee, not even one of the Starbucks or one of those other expensive ones. I can't get a coffee at 7-Eleven down the road for 60 cents a day. I ask, is your child's education worth that?
As you know, Woodbridge is having a referendum on March 10th as well. The referendum is for $86 million, and they're building a school. A popular question is, why is the Edison referendum $183 million as opposed to the $86 million at Woodbridge? And how much is the Edison taxpayer paying as opposed to the Woodbridge taxpayer?
I don't know the tax rate in Woodbridge, so I can't comment on that part, but I did share what the impact of this referendum would have on the average taxpayer in our town. As far as Woodbridge goes, I know Rob Zaga, he's a friend of mine. He's the superintendent there. I don't know the intricacies of their town or what they're exactly doing, but I do know that they're closing the Avenel School number 4 and 5. And that's a school that has 450 students. We don't have any school that has 450 students. And for $85 million, they're getting a new school. I don't know. I think we're getting a better bang for our buck in all that we're doing for $183 million. Again, I can't speak for Woodbridge. I don't know exactly what's involved. I know they're closing the Avenel School 4 and 5, and that's what the new school is going to be for. Again, it's a school of much smaller population than ours, and I know they're doing some additional additions to a few other schools. I think it's hard when you compare our situation to another towns, because every town is unique, right? Our community is unique. Our community is large. Our population is large, and the schools, we need to address the problem. And by creating even an $85 million elementary school, or one elementary school with a few additions, that's not going to solve our problem. Our direct problem is related to our high schools. And we need to add space in those high schools. Simran, you went to the high school, and it was significantly less students when you went there than there is now.
Can you tell us what percentage of the total budget is allocated for day-to-day operating expenses, and how much of the budget is funded by Edison taxpayers?
That one I don't know off the top of my head. I know that the overall 80 to 85% of most school budgets is directly related to teacher salary and benefits, and our school is very similar. 82% or somewhere thereabout. Don't hold me to the exact number. And I think the amount of state aid we get, typically, it's actually gone up in recent years, that we're finally getting back to being close to adequacy, which is the rate that the state government is supposed to fund according to our numbers. We're still under adequacy, but we're getting closer to it with the S2 funding formula. Dan, if I could put you on the spot and ask, our local tax levy is about what percentage of our normal budget?
89% of our budget is funded by local taxpayers.
Okay. So 89%, Mr. Mashad, I'm sorry, is our business administrator. He's been in that capacity since 1986 and is excellent at that job. So in a town such as ours, in a suburban community, we're paying almost 90% of the burden for our taxes fall on the local tax levy, which is significant.
Moving past the finance portion of the bond, this bond covers 6 schools, so what will happen to the rest?
That's a great question. I've had this question before. Actually, Monroe School PTO wants me to speak to them because some of their community is saying that the James Monroe School that was recently rebuilt after that tragic fire a few years ago, why should we vote for this? Why should, our school's brand new and it's a beautiful school. It's one of the reasons we need to do this, because you look what a learning space could be when it's modernized and up to date and it's an appropriate size for the students in which it houses, and it makes you feel like every student in our town should have that, and that will be mitigated with the 6 schools that are affected in this referendum. But more importantly, and this is important for the entire school community to understand, on an annual basis, we've been spending anywhere from $4 to $10 million or thereabouts to put Band-Aids on the overcrowding, whether that's portable structures at the FDR building by James Madison Intermediate, or that's portable trailers that are put on the Woodrow Wilson School, or an addition on the Menlo Park School, or a smaller addition on the Woodbrook Elementary School. On an annual basis, we've been funding those Band-Aids. They're not an overall structure, through Lend-Lease purchase agreements or just our normal operating budget. And we're just stopping the water from flooding out of the dam, but it's not a full-time solution. With the passage of the referendum, those annual outlays of capital could then be mitigated and used for other sides of town, for some of the structural spaces that we have like this. This is a multi-purpose room that was built in the 1960s. It's inadequate for a group spacing for 900 students, 1,000 students. Well, all the elementary schools on this side of town have spaces like this. So when the referendum passes, we could do on an annual basis, we could look at these spaces and also make them more appropriate to the students that they have, and then somewhat share the wealth that all the schools will be affected. Before we do that, though, one of the most significant things that we want to do when the referendum passes in March 10th is create full-day kindergarten. Educationally, it's not sound not to have full-day kindergarten. I know why we don't have it, due to spaces, and we had the budget cuts from 2010 that forced the previous administration and boards to deal with that and cut full-day kindergarten, but we need to do it. Passing this referendum will free up that annual capital outlay that will allow us to secure the additional classroom space for full-day kindergarten. That is a direct outcome of this referendum passing. If it doesn't pass, I don't see how we could do that. We won't have the space or the money to do that. So I think that's something that our community, especially with younger children, needs to hear. And our anticipated start date for that, if this referendum passes, again, anticipated depends on a lot of things, on whether we could secure a structure such as the old Stelton School or rent space from St. Matthew's or St. Helena's, would be September 2022. That's our goal. You can't hold me to that because it depends on a lot of other factors. But if the referendum doesn't pass in March, that's really not a likelihood.
Speaking of full-day kindergarten, some critics have said that your letter to the community does not guarantee full-day kindergarten, but at the same time, you've said that this plan will help facilitate full-day kindergarten. Can you provide some assurances passing this referendum will ultimately get us full-day kindergarten?
That's a great question. I can't guarantee that the sun's going to come up tomorrow, but I'm counting on it. And I'm planning on the sun coming up tomorrow, and that's how I'm going to work my night tonight and tomorrow morning. We are, as a Board of Education, and I don't speak solely for myself because we've talked about this, when the referendum passes, we're going to initially use that additional capital outlays that were annually spent on Band-Aids for the overcrowding to create full-day kindergarten. You have my word. You have the board's word that they've gave me the authority to speak on their behalf in this capacity. Can I guarantee it? I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee you this. One is my word. I take it very seriously when I say something. I don't say it if I don't think I could do it. So you will have every effort from me to be true to my word and to do it. And I will also do everything behind the scenes that I could do, as I said previously, to make that a reality for September 2022.
As you mentioned before, I am a recent graduate from John P. Stevens High School, and one of the most pressing issues that we had in regards to overcrowding was moving through the hallways. Can you explain to us to what extent does this plan alleviate those hallway issues that are in our schools?
That's a great question. In the new spaces that'll be created, we will try to have larger common areas such as hallways and corridors and meeting spaces. That most new construction, we do that now anticipating growth in the future. Unfortunately, for schools such as this, schools such as John P. Stevens High School and Edison High School, we can't really change the infrastructure that's there regarding hallways. Because in order to make a hallway significantly larger, that means we have to demolish a number of classrooms on either side of that, creating the problem that we have now. So what we will do is try to mitigate that and having the classroom spaces that now, many of the classrooms are conducted on a cart. We don't have art rooms, we don't have music rooms. We have English classes taking place in former wood shops. That will have space for those classes to have a home. And one of the things that we're doing now, and we would do then, because the schools will be larger, right? You were there, it's hard to get from one end of the building to the other side in the allotted time for passing. We would structure some of the passings for the classes that are farther away, maybe a minute or two overlap, and that would require some strategic scheduling on the administration to make sure that the hallways were not crowded with all the students all the time. Another option that we're exploring, and I'm not committing to this, we're looking into it, would be block scheduling, which significantly reduces almost by half the passing that would occur during each school day at the high schools and middle schools. Again, that's in the exploration phase, and we'll see how that plays out.
If the referendum passes on March 10th, what's the outlook as to when we'll actually see the problems alleviated? Obviously, it takes time to implement the plan. So what does the calendar look like? When can students see alleviations to the overcrowding problems that they're dealing with?
As with anything, and myself included, we want it done yesterday, right? I'm always operating with a sense of urgency that I don't have enough time, whether that's in the week, the day, the year, in my life, to say the least. But I could guarantee you this, and from our past experience, and we did have a successful referendum pass in my previous superintendency. The night it passed, we had a celebratory cocktail or two, and we started planning that night when we were meeting with the architect, when we were meeting to get the plans out, when we were going to set up, structure which school, which construction plan was going to take place first. And I would say we would do the exact same thing. We would meet probably that night, schedule a meeting the day or the following couple of days afterwards, and start planning, going out for bid, getting the contractors set up, strategizing when we're going to do which construction in which school. The time frame, could it be anywhere from 2 to 4 years? I would try to work really hard to get it done sooner than later and hit the places that are most crowded first. But that's also a reason we can't wait. You pass the referendum on March 10th, which I'm confident it will, and there's still a lag before you see that taking place. There's a lot behind the scenes that has to go on before you see shovels in the ground in schools that are opening and having grand openings where we have the shovel in the ground and we're cutting the ribbons and we're walking through the gates. That doesn't happen the next day. So it kind of all relates back to your first question, why March? Well, if we wait another 6 months, that's another 6 months added on to however many years it will take to bring this plan to fruition.
As someone with over 32 years of experience in education, can you talk to us a little bit about the impact on the ability of teachers to be effective as class sizes increase with student population?
You had to throw those years of experience in there? These guys are probably thinking I graduated when I was like 5, right? Class size matters in this. Good teaching is good teaching, right? And if you're a really good teacher and you're effective at what you do, you're going to be productive. But there is a law of diminishing returns. Every additional student over a certain number diminishes the amount of time you get to spend with all the students. And if you follow me on Twitter, which I hope everyone does, if not, it's at Edison Soup, my personal Twitter account. This week we're focusing on personalized learning. It's a buzzword, you hear about it. But with some of the advents of technology and some of the things, instructional practices we can do in the classroom, our teachers can really target students and individualize their instruction to best meet their needs. I know all of you when you were in school, I know when I was in school, some students were progressing at a faster pace than other students in your classroom, in a typically developing, general ed classroom, even in a high-performing classroom. And a teacher's ability to individualize and meet all the learners' needs, those that need more support and those that you want to accentuate the instruction to get them to the next level, is diminished by each additional student. There's a sweet spot, you would say 20 to 25 is where you want to be. You start adding every additional student on top of that, makes it more difficult. Is it impossible? No, because we will do whatever we're charged to do, and we'll do it to the best of our ability. But when a teacher has 30 students in a class, 31 students, 32 students, the ability to individualize and provide that personal touch that we all need as human beings gets diminished, just by the sake of time and space and availability of resources. So that's been my experience over my 32-year career. Thanks for pointing that out, everyone. Thank you.
If this referendum does not pass, what is the impact on our schools? Is the district heading towards a split schedule?
Did you ask that question, or was that from one of the cards? Did you just get? All right. I can't say that. I mean, if the referendum fails, we're gonna go back to the drawing board and take a look at all our options. You know, I'm not a quitter. I'm not going to put my head in the sand and say, oh, geez, we failed. We're done. We can't do anything. We're not going to do that because, one, that's not who I am. That's not who the board is. That's not what they're paying me for. And that's also not what this district is about. We'll figure it out. I could sit here and tell you, oh, if the referendum fails, everything's going to be terrible. That's a lie. It's not going to be terrible. We're going to make it work because that's what we do. That's what I do. And I won't accept failure as an option. We'll figure it out. But it'll be much harder. And some of those things that we really were hopeful we could get done, such as full-day kindergarten, that's not going to be an option in the near future because we will still be trying to mitigate the overcrowding with those funds, and we won't have the funds needed for some of the things that we really want to do to accentuate our programs. It'll make it harder than what we're trying to do, but we'll get it done. You asked about split sessions. I would say that's an absolute last resort because I wouldn't want to do that, and I'm not going to threaten people and say that's what we're going to do. We would consider any and all options. That would not be my first choice, though. As superintendent, I can't speak for anyone else.
On Tuesday, we heard from Mayor Lanke at the State of the Township address. And speaking about overcrowding, he said, "We haven't done enough, and that's clear. There are a number of issues that need to be tackled. Failure is not an option as we move forward. We need to solve the overcrowding issue. Our kids depend upon it. What specifically can be done to work closer with the Edison municipal side of government, and how can they assist you to alleviate school overcrowding?"
I was at the State of Edison Township address, and those exact words that Mayor Lanke said, for me personally, and maybe I'm just looking into it, I heard him say, pass the referendum. That's what I heard. I'm just putting it out there. It's not what he said, but that's what I heard. We continue to work with the township, and we'll continue to do that. I've met Mayor Lanke, I've met the town council members, and we're going to try to work together and do what we can to help the overcrowding. One of the things that we can do is we're looking at the Stelton School and maybe looking at possibly taking that from the township via purchase, lend-lease. I don't know the legalities involved with that, but I know that would require significant renovations inside. Again, that's one of the things, if the referendum passes, we could dedicate monies to that and perhaps make that one of the kindergarten and early childhood learning centers. I'm not sure. But we will continue to dialogue with the township and continue to share services like we currently do and work towards maybe increasing those efforts and being on the same page with managing growth and what we could do collectively to help the burden of school. You know, development is great and it increases our tax base, but typically development also brings with children, which is great. Young families move in and it brings back vitality to a community, but they come to school. And we have to work together to make sure they come to schools that are not overcrowded and we can best serve those students so they can graduate and be successful as some of our other JPS graduates, such as yourself, Simran.
What is the plan if this referendum does not pass on March 10th?
Well, first, there'll be no celebratory cocktails if it doesn't pass. The next thing would be we go back to the drawing board. Right away, we're going to look at other options. You know, I've talked to some board members privately, and we had discussions even with some town council members that if this doesn't pass, we're going to go look at the whole plan again, sit back collectively, and come up with another plan, and maybe tweak the one we have. We will appeal to the state for their support because they have the ability to override a failed referenda if there are two in a row that were very similar, and ours would meet that criteria. But that's a process, and that will take at least a year or two, and it's not guaranteed to be successful. So while we're doing that, We will actively look at the other options we can do, and we will continue to put Band-Aids on the problem, and we will make the best with what we have, because that's who we are.
At this time, I'm going to go over a few of the index card problems. Again, I'm going to try to go through as many of these as possible, but given the short period of time, again, Dr. Bragen and the other professionals have agreed to stay back behind, so you can ask your questions at that time. When was the last time the referendum got approved?
The last referendum that was approved was related to the James Monroe School, but was a result of a tragic fire. 2014? I don't remember the year that was.
2015, but we didn't use any of it. It was $18 million, but we didn't use any of it.
So it was 2015 for the school that burned down tragically, James Monroe, but the money wasn't needed because I believe the insurance ultimately wound up paying for the cost of replacement.
What the school district is doing given the recent tragedies of students on mental health issues?
As a father of 3 daughters, who I hope to be successful, I'm very cognizant of their social emotional well-being. And as parents, we want to push our students to be successful, but we don't want them to break, right? So this is not unique to Edison Township. It's going on with our entire society now, and we're putting in supports and things to work with our school counselors, to work with our teachers, to identify children that we see that are at risk, to provide supports for them, to provide programming within the schools as best as we can to help deal with the overall well-being of a child. Some of those things are wellness practices in our gyms and in our elementary classes. Programs such as the Wingman are just examples of things that we're trying to do to help support students in a positive way that are struggling. But I'll be honest with you, as a father in the 21st century, it's scary how our young people are feeling so much pressure and feeling so much anxiety that at a time in their life when they should be happy. Elementary school, secondary, high school for me were the happiest times of my life. And we have a lot of students that that's not the case for. And it's tragic. And our schools are doing more and more, but part of that is the burden as well, that more and more is placed on the schools. We're not expected just to educate the children anymore. We're expected to do a lot of other things that traditionally we didn't do. And we are adjusting and adapting to that, but it's evolving, and we'll continue to provide more supportive services because they are needed.
How do you plan to mitigate the academic differences between J.P. Stevens and Edison High School?
Now, I started this saying I graduated from Edison High School. You heard that, right? So what are you trying to say? You know, it's funny. One of the first things I did here was the Edison Eagle did a press conference with me and talked to, about a lot of questions. That was the first question the students asked. And they said, how was I going to deal with the achievement gap between the two schools? And it really broke my heart, to be honest with you, because the students at Edison High School felt inferior. They're not. Nor are the students at JP superior, right? We have the same curriculum at both schools. The same advanced placement courses are offered at Edison High School as at JP Stevens. The students didn't believe me. They were in the school. Freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors in Edison didn't believe they had access to the same classes. So that perception that's out there, it was sad for me that it permeated down to the students. There's a difference because it's different communities. And what I saw, and I grew up on this side of town, my dad worked in a chemical plant as a factory worker. He wasn't an attorney, he wasn't a doctor, wasn't a professor at college. We had a different upbringing in a smaller home. You know, this side of town was built in the shadow of the Ford plant, White Westinghouse, Fetters. Many of my friends' parents worked on the line at the Ford plant, or they worked at Fetters and making air conditioners, for those that remember before Amazon took over the corner, right? S&H Stamps was a warehouse down the road from here. So, you know, my friends' dads drove forklifts. Those homes weren't as culturally, literature-rich as some of the homes of my friends that lived on Stephenville Parkway or Inman Avenue, whose parents were, worked at Wall Street or worked as physicians or dentists or pharmacists. And sometimes when you come from a more enriched environment, you have higher expectations. That being said, I think what that creates is we may have more students that are taking those advanced courses at JP because of their upbringing. I don't think there's any gap, though. I think the students that want to be challenged and want access to those classes have the same availability at Edison High School. And I think I'm a prime example of that. You know, I didn't come from a literature-rich house, but the expectation were you were going to do well, and you were going to do well in school. And I think a student that enters Edison High School in the same that enters J.P. Stevens High School in 9th grade has the same opportunities to excel if they so choose. As a matter of fact, I just found out 2 days ago that we have a student from Edison High School who's got accepted to West Point. You know, I know one of our board members, our former president, had a daughter that got accepted to West Point as well. She went to J.P. Stevens. This young student went to Edison High School. The opportunities are there for both sides.
Will full-day kindergarten be by lottery or only for certain areas, students, etc.?
While our sides of town and maybe individual schools have different flavors and different cultures, different personalities related to their administration and their environments, every student in Edison Township is afforded the same opportunities. So there will be no full-day kindergarten if it's lessons for everyone. There will be no lotteries, there will be no sides of town. Full-day kindergarten, I believe in it, our board believes in it. We're going to do everything we can to make it a reality. And it's either going to be for everyone or it's going to be for no one.
How will the district ensure non-residents do not continue to take seats from Edison residents?
Another great question. It's an ongoing issue, and one, when you have a school system that's viewed in a very high esteem, those that live in surrounding communities want to get a piece of that, and they want to come to the school. We have dedicated professionals that are working to find the students that don't live here, and when we find the students don't live here, we have them sign out, and those that don't sign out, we take them to court, and we try to get them to pay the tuition fees that they would owe us if they don't sign out, and we've been successful with that. We'll continue to do that. I know there was a proposed resolution for the town council. I wasn't at the last meeting, where they were going to propose a township resolution as well, that there'd be a significant economic fine for those students that we found that didn't live here and were going to school here. You know, that would be an example, too, of how we can continue to work with the township and maybe pass legislation that would help support us when people don't live here and holding them accountable.
Unfortunately, that's all the questions we have time for today. But thank you all for coming out, and again, feel free to stay back and ask Dr. Bragen or the other professionals any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.